Hello, I am Larcy Cutright, a hazardous waste management specialist for the Environmental Protection Agency, and I will be presenting on dredging the Hudson River to eliminate PCBs. PCBs are polychlorinated biphenyls, which are industrial products or chemicals that were dumped into the Hudson River in 1946 by General Electric. This caused impacts on the health of the environment and humans. The Environmental Protection Agency has estimated that about 1.3 million pounds of PCBs were dumped into the 200 miles of the Hudson River, which is now a Superfund site. Dredging is the removal of sediments and debris from the bottom of the bodies of water, reduces the exposure of fish, wildlife, and people to contaminants, and the prevention of spreading contaminants to other areas. There are many environmental impacts and pros and cons to having PCBs in the environment. Some of the pros are that PCBs have chemical properties that are non-flammable, chemical and thermal stability, dielectric properties, miscible with organic compounds, and biodegradable. Some of the cons are that PCBs do not readily break down and remain in the environment for long periods of time. And also, they have a negative impact on fish and wildlife. The process of breaking down PCBs includes sunlight, which usually breaks down PCBs that are found in the air or shallow water, or microorganisms such as bacteria biodegrade PCBs when found in soil sediments. The main issue with this is reported by scientists is that PCBs can take up to hundreds of years to break down, and that river bottoms are fragile, and that rainstorms and fish can stir up the PCBs buried beneath the sediments if they are not removed. In addition, PCBs have a negative impact on fish and wildlife. High levels of PCBs have been detected in fish that have led to advisories that restrict the consumption of fish caught in the Hudson River. In an interview with Gary Klewinski, he reported that the goal was to remove the sediments to improve the conditions of the river such that fish would recover faster than if we did nothing. The dredging accelerates the potential for the river to recover. The sediment concentration decreases as well as the water concentration, and reduce the concentration in the fish. PCBs were detected in people and animals around the world. However, there are many health impacts that are caused by PCBs. Some of the pros of PCBs are that they leave the body via the bowel and fecal movements, and there are tests to detect high levels of PCBs. These tests help in health prevention methods of treatment of diseases that are caused by PCB exposure. Some of the cons are that PCBs cause liver and biliary tract cancers, acute toxic effects that cause irritation of the skin, nose, and lungs, and development of effects such as low birth weight, decreased head size, lowered IQ, and performance. Additionally, PCBs also disrupt normal hormone function in men and women, shorten menstrual cycles, reduce sperm counts, alter sex organs, and have an onset of premature puberty. With all the negative environmental and health impacts due to PCB exposure, I will introduce a proposed action for recommendation. The EPA has constructed a proposed plan that will address PCB contamination in the Hudson River. The goal is to eliminate PCB contamination and exposure by dredging 2.65 million cubic yards of the Hudson River. The dredging of the Hudson River will occur in two phases. And it will begin at the bottom of the Hudson River. Phase 1 is removal of an estimated 280,000 cubic yards of contaminated sediment from 6 miles of the upper Hudson River. Phase 2 is removal of 2.5 million cubic yards, which is the remainder of the contaminated sediments. Post-dredging, there will be habitat reconstruction and aquatic plant repopulation. In order to specifically address the health impacts of PCB exposure, CDC has created recommendations. There are treatment strategies on how to manage PCB poisoning, prevent occupational and environmental PCB exposure. Currently, there's no specific treatment plan for individuals that have PCB exposure that leads to PCB accumulation in the body and its organs. There are two types of exposure treatments: acute and chronic exposure treatment. Acute exposure is poisoning of the skin and the eyes. And the exposure treatment consists of flushing of the eyes and the skin, removal of contaminated clothing, and periodic follow-up examinations. Chronic exposure consists of consuming contaminated fish or game. The main goal is prevention of additional PCB exposure. Fishing advisories that ban consumption of fish and game in the upper Hudson River. Monitoring of the Hudson River is crucial to recovery and prevention of further environmental and health impacts. Demobilization and restoration completion, cleanup phase, operation, maintenance, and monitoring program. The Hudson River will be monitored in order to track recovery and effectiveness of the cleanup over time, and there will be 5-year reviews. Okay. The dredging of the Hudson River will be monitored in the following areas. Water column, which assesses the level of PCB concentration throughout the upper and lower Hudson River. Weekly sampling will be done for 3 years. Sediment will assess PCB concentration in the sediments over time in both dredged and non-dredged areas. Fish will assess the PCB concentration in the numerous fish species in the upper and lower Hudson areas. Additionally, fish samples will be collected to assist the New York State Department of Health and the New York State of Environmental Conservation to assess the existing and future fish consumption advisories. Okay, for the habitat phase, it will consist of evaluation of habitat reconstructions and repopulated aquatic plants immediately after the reconstruction and the repopulation occurs. Okay, and for the CAP phase, we will assess the long-term effectiveness of the caps that were placed at the bottom of the river to isolate small amounts of PCBs that remained after dredging. Okay. In conclusion, in order for the dredging of the Hudson River to be a success, the environmental and health exposures will have to decrease. The goal is to dredge as much of the sediments in the river as possible. Many testing and retesting procedures, precautions, and advisories will be in effect to further protect individuals of and along the Hudson River community. Thank you for listening to my presentation.